Okay, let's see if I'm live here. Anybody that can see me, let me know if, text something over here in the corner. Let me know if you can hear me, see me, if it's working right. I'm just kind of playing with this right now. It's working? Somebody said it's working. Well, hello, YouTubers. Kevin here, and I just thought I'd get on here and chit-chat a little with everybody. If you guys have any questions or comments or whatever you got, let me have it. But I thought I'd start out with just kind of talking about the video we put up a week ago about living in our tiny house for $66 a month, and I got quite a reaction out of that. In fact, that video is about a week old, and there's something like 62,000 views of it, which is a little more abnormal than what I typically get that quickly on a video. And so I'd say I hit a nerve and got some interest stirred up, and I think people were interested in finding out how I lived. There was maybe some confusion for some people about the $66 a month thing. And if somebody would type a question, that would be good, because then I can see if I'm using that. I'm new to this live thing, so bear with me here while we figure this out. But I'm looking for a. I can't tell who's. I guess there's 4 people watching. Looks like 7 people watching. 9 people watching. Okay. And I think you can type there, health insurance. Okay, there's Mike C. Hey, Mike. We do have health insurance. We live in Washington State, and so we have they have several programs here, and we're on one of them. But specifically, and the insurance, obviously, not unlike probably the rest of the country, is getting out of hand. So the amount of coverage we get versus the the premiums and the deductibles and what they will and won't cover is eroding. And hey, thanks for congratulations. Good, we got getting some communication going here. That's awesome. So anyway, yeah, we have insurance, and depending on what state you're in and where you're at, those things tend to change quite a bit, apparently.
We keep high deductibles.
Ours is a high deductible,
low payment.
and that keeps our payment low, just like any other type of insurance, like your car, or house, or whatever. At any rate, the $66 thing, I think, was really caught everybody's attention. And so the whole idea there was that we lived in that RV for 2.5 years, 30 months, and we sold it for $2,000 less than what we paid for it originally. And so I just took that and divided it by the 30 months, and that's how I came up with the $66 a month that it cost us to use that RV and live in it while we were staying here and working on the project. And so I just wanted to show you that, depending on the RV, I mean, you can spend a lot of money on an RV, or you can spend very little on an older RV that's still functional and clean and usable and good repair and so forth. Live in it for whatever period of time you have to meet your goal, and then sell it when you get done if you like, and probably recoup most, if not all, your investment in that, so that you got to use it for very little, if anything. That was the idea behind that. And we were allowed to do that on our property. We kept it right here on the property that we were building our house on. That was legal, I guess, if you will. And so that's what we did. We that kept us right here at the project site, keep an eye on the place, and not costing us to live away and then have to come back and forth. And so that was kind of the idea. And you can pick trailers up for little. I mean, the funny thing about RVs is that most of the time they just sit there. They don't get. That was the premise behind that. But I think everybody seems to, everybody's looking for, how do I get out of this whole mortgage trap, or rent trap, or the cost of shelter, if you will, just seems to be going up and up all the time. And it is our biggest expense in life, and if we can figure out how to minimize or eliminate the cost of living or cost of housing, then we're way ahead of the game. And that's the purpose behind my having created this project and video tape the whole thing so that you could see how to do it and benefit from it. And so we thought we'd go live today. Took a while to figure out all this live business, and put that together for you so that you can ask questions if you like and interact with us and find out all those pressing things that you've always wanted to know. Somebody asked, any deals on the home builders course? Well, we haven't had any sales per se, discounts or whatever on that, but we may come up with something that would encourage people to jump in. I can tell you that the people that are in the course and have gone through the course have been very satisfied and happy with having gone through it, and so there is that. And if the cost of the course is hanging you up, I mean, it's a monthly price that's pretty reasonable. And when you think about learning how to build your own home and being able to build your own home and save the amount of money that you're going to save on building your home, it's a pretty tiny price. I mean, you spend more than that a month on your mortgage, so the whole price of that thing. So I'd say that's a heck of a deal right there. Jane Jones, I see you here. Yes, less than the cost of the gas in your car, you bet. And kind of sounds almost unbelievable, $66 a month to live in a shelter of some sort. But you know what? That was what we figured out. And I got to tell you that my wife and I have thought for a while that we were getting away with something. And we got away with not having to pay a lot of rent or mortgage payments. And I will tell you that I think I can speak to this pretty well, because we have had plenty of mortgage payments in the past, and we have been deeply in debt in the past, and so I feel uniquely capable of speaking to getting out of debt and not having mortgages and so forth. And so been on both sides of that fence, with and without, and I can tell you that the not having one is definitely a lot of fun. And so it does take a little bit of effort. My wife and I, Anise and I, worked really hard the first time we built our own home 20-some years ago, and raising kids and working full time, and then buying the materials and working on the house on the evenings and weekends, and that was our hobby, that was our pastime, that was our we did that instead of watching TV. And it accomplished a lot of things for us. It got us a lot of house for very little money. It kept us, kept our cost of living down demonstrably. And when we were living in that area that we had, had that house built, we moved to that area not knowing that was the most depressed county in the state of Washington that we were living in. I'm getting adjusted here. Apparently I can't see me, so I don't know where I'm at. At any rate, so cost of living, even earning income up there was difficult, and so we were challenged by a lot of things, economic, and so going in there and building that house, building our house for cash and ourselves, put us in a unique position to be able to live better on less, and be able to benefit from that. And so we, the kids, when they were going to school, their friends would see our home and say, "Boy, you must be rich because you have such a big house." And bottom line was we built ourselves, so we probably saved 2/3 of the cost of that house that most people were paying, mortgages on. And so that was what got us a whole lot of house for the money. And so, just it's a time versus money thing, and you know, you can either spend all your time earning the money to pay for those houses, or you can spend your time learning how to build them and build them yourself. And I think you come out ahead when you're doing that. And yeah, I mean, this is great for the kids coming up. I mean, our kids are adults now. They're looking at the same scenarios, only housing prices are just unbelievable. You know, I can't understand how these kids are going to go out and figure out how to buy a house in today's housing market. It's just insane. I mean, they have to be able to earn quite a bit of money in order to qualify to buy a house that's you know, reasonable. And in fact, my oldest son is looking into that right now and finding out how much you know, he can buy for, you know, what he's allowed to spend, if you will, what he qualifies for. It's not much, and you know, in our area, $150,000 doesn't get you a whole lot of house, and so, but if you built, you could, you know, if you spent $150,000 in materials building a house, you could get a heck of a lot of house, and it would be a new house. So that's the idea here, and it's not as hard as you think. It's, if you look at the whole house project and say, you know, I got to build a house, it can be overwhelming really quickly. But if you just take this apart and really dissect this down to the individual, you know, phases of construction, it's not that difficult, and it's certainly doable. And shamelessly plugging my course, there's a lot of detail in the videos that shows you just exactly how to do this. And we're talking about building a, you know, a basic structure, not a, you know, crazy looking architecturally beautiful, you know, with all the crazy roof lines and you know, square footages that you get in these McMansions they're putting out there. We're just talking about a very reasonable house to build and maintain, and you know, cost. The more complicated of a house you build, the more expensive it gets to be to build it, and also to maintain it. So, um, so if anybody has any questions about the building process or about how we, you know, created this project, this is your opportunity. Um, and yeah, you know, for the kids, it's great because the lost art of being mortgage free. You know, we used to build our own houses back in the day, and we've just gotten away from that. And now people don't know that process anymore, and you know, we're paying other people exorbitant amounts of money to do it for us. It's kind of like, you know, working on your car. If you don't understand the mechanics, then you're still going to spend a lot of money at the car dealership or the mechanic shop, having it maintained and repaired. And so the more of that you learn, the more self-reliant you become, which is, you know, the basis of our website, selfreliantlife.com. The more money you can save, and the more independent you become, because you can do these things yourself. And so then you don't have to work, you know, till you're 65 years old trying to pay off a mortgage, which you probably won't ever pay off, because people typically get their mortgage into a certain point where they've got some equity built up, or the house is appreciated, and suddenly you have this, basically what becomes a house turned into a credit card. And so people get that second mortgage, and they start using that low interest loaning off their home, and they go out and spend it on other things. They buy toys, and they go on vacations, and they do various things, and, you know, pay for weddings and colleges and so forth. And so that mortgage just stays out there on the horizon, and you're always paying for it. So if you can get into a house, build it yourself, you're going to save a lot of money. You're not going to be subject to the economic trends in housing, because when you own it, it doesn't matter. The price may go up and down, but you're never going to be upside down in a house you own. And so there's a huge benefit to that, plus the fact that you're not making a payment, which is the biggest benefit, I believe. And if you build your own house, then you also know how to maintain it, repair it, and that keeps you from having to pay other people, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, whatever, to come in and do it for you. And the simpler you keep it, the easier that becomes as well. So, any questions about the process, the program, the idea here that, you know, we just don't need to have these mortgages, and it's unnecessary. And you know, a lot of people are struggling to, you know, have an income and have some sort of, you know, housing situation that they can afford and save money in order to get ahead and maybe get into their own home or pay their homes off. And that in and of itself is, you know, I guess the big question, the $64 question is, how do you do this? And I'm willing to make the trade-offs necessary we have over the years in order to do that. And so it may mean that you trade or give up certain uh, economic freedoms that you're currently enjoying in order to divert those funds over to a housing fund that you can create, and you know, start your own project. And I would say, you know, starting small, you know, find out in your municipality that you would like to, you know, build a home, what is the minimum square footage of home that you can build by code. And it's easy to find out. You just need to go to your planning commission, which is your entity that approves and does all your inspections. So your planning department, which is either going to be in your county or your city, whichever one you're in, and just ask them. You can call them up or you can go in, whatever, and say, hey, what's the smallest square footage that I'm allowed to build by law for this area, and build that. And then you can always add on to it later, which is what we've done in the past, and create, uh, you know, a bigger house as you go. You can grow into it. I mean, if you wind up with more kids or need more space, whatever. So you saw a unfinished shed, small home for $7,000. I was thinking of getting that and learn how to finish it. Yeah, you could do that. Um, if you're going to do a shed, here's the deal. If you go down and look at the sheds that you can buy at the big box stores right now, I just did this, what, 2 years ago, Anissa? And when we built the one we have now, the cost of buying it there done and having it delivered onto my site was 3 times the price that I could build it myself for just the material cost. And so that's what we did. And um, we built that shed, which is a plan and a video scenario that we put together on our products page if you want to learn to build that. 1/3 the price, and that's typical of your houses. If you build your own home, it's going to be about 1/3 of the price of having somebody do it for you.
What size is that $7,000 shed?
Yeah, what size shed is that shed you're referring to for 7,000? And yes, we have courses for electricity and plumbing, and then we have the entire course which covers all that, as well as the building. We talk about, actually, that the full course starts from looking for a piece of property and doing a, you know, feasibility study on the property and making sure it's the right property for you, and going through the buying process, going through getting all the utilities designed and put in, doing the grading work around the site in order to get it ready to build, uh, right on up through the concrete foundation and into the finished home. So everything's included in it, and it's all video. That is a good price for a 30 by 60. That's a huge building. That's and so that would be for $7,000. That's very inexpensive. Of course, you know, you got to have your foundation and so forth. So it depends on what you're going to do there, and then that's going to give you a shell,
And then cost of moving it.
and you know, cost of having it brought into your site and erected or whatever they're doing there. But yeah, that's good. That sounds like a pretty good price.
Still a good price.
So and that's a lot of square footage. Heck of a lot more than I got. But anyway, the cost. So that's you're spending 2/3 more to have somebody else build your home than if you could do it yourself. So that's, imagine, you know, even if you took a loan out for the material and built it yourself and then had to pay the loan back, you're still paying a heck of a lot less back to build your house and saving a ton of money on the interest than if you were to go out and, just buy a home finished and get a big mortgage and keep paying. So 30 by 60 with a loft, yeah, that's a heck of a deal. That would give you a lot of space. So just check with your planning department and find out if that's something you can do and turn into a home legally, if you will. There may be some things that have to be changed in as far as the because an outbuilding or a shop or whatever, if you're going to build that and it's not to be occupied, the building codes are different than if you were in a livable space because of safety. And so things that you would not necessarily, I mean, you can put a shed up out in the backyard for, not worrying about, I mean, a lot of places like where we're at, we built shed and they don't come out and inspect it because it's not an occupied space. But if you're going to live in it, then they're going to expect that to have certain design elements for safety. So yes, I'm allergic to mortgages too. I found out by having one for a long time, and it had a nice allergic reaction to that as it emptied my wallet every month. So yeah, I can appreciate where you're coming from there. And we all, I think, have a certain amount of allergy to mortgages, right? They tend to give us an allergic financial reaction every month, and that's why we don't want them. And if I was going to do this all over again and I was a single guy, I would just go out and live in a tent on my property. In fact, I know a guy that did that years ago and built his home, and he was more extreme than I was because he spent the winter in one, which I don't know if I'd want to do that, but he wound up with, building his own home and buying his property and saving literally tens of thousands of dollars, which is the idea here, right? So any other questions? I mean, we're just kind of playing with this one on live here just to see how we finally figure this out, or I should say Anissa did, because I didn't know how to do it, but apparently this is working, so we'll do more of these. I think this is great to have a chance to actually interact with everybody live and find out what those pressing questions are, if there are any. And I do have the building idea here is, once you learn how to do some framing and take this thing a step at a time, break it apart into pieces, I think it's not as overwhelming. I mean, we've showed you how to film or frame up walls and floors and do the basic components of creating the shell of a house, and then putting in the wiring and the plumbing is not that difficult either. You just have to understand some of the basic processes and be code compliant, obviously. I mean, that's what's going to be necessary, because you want to do this right for safety reasons, and it's resale value and so forth if you ever decide you want to sell. You're very welcome. I'm glad to share the information. Hope it helps people. My idea here is that if I can show enough people how to do this, that folks can have a home without having to be crushed by a mortgage all their life. And then the idea here too is, without a mortgage, what would you do with all that extra money? I mean, you can save it. You can retire earlier. You can travel with it. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do when you don't have to spend. What did we figure out was the lifetime cost of housing for the average person in America? It was like $500,000 a person or something. That's a lot of money. That's incredible. What layout design changes would I make to the house that we're in now? So far, I think we're pretty satisfied. I think the one thing, so we live in an area that gets a lot of rain in the wintertime. We actually get we're on the coast of Washington State, right on the Pacific Ocean here, and we get about 80 inches of rain a year. And so we have this covered patio out here, which, covered by having a roof over it. The roof line extends out over the top of the patio. So we have this nice patio. Now, we don't get a lot of cold weather, so it's kind of like spring and fall here all the time. And so we thought, well, a third of our living space is basically outdoors but under cover. But in the wintertime, when the rain is driving sideways in the wind, it definitely makes sitting outside on the patio a little bit difficult. And so I think if I was going to change anything, and we probably will change, is I'm going to frame up a wall on that side of the patio with some big windows in it, so we still have the light and ventilation coming through, but to block that driving rain and wind in the wintertime. And so, during the summer when it's nice, we can just slide the windows open and have the breeze coming through and be able to see out into the yard, but shut it up in the wintertime and be able to sit out there and not have to deal with the 40-some-mile-an-hour winds we can get during storms and the majority of our rain coming down in the wintertime, so we can spend more time in our outdoor area. So that's probably one of the big things. Anything else that you would change, Anissa? No?
No, we put a lot of thought into this and took our time, so we were
Yeah,
able to
and
design it as we went.
we did kind of, I honestly, to tell you the truth, we built this house basically without a plan. Just kind of designed it in our head and said, here's what we want to do. And it was very fluid in how, as we went along, we did make some changes because we just found things to be easier, less expensive. What else, Anissa? What would be another? Maybe just some thoughts that once we got on the property and realized the way the weather was and the way the way the orientation of the house was to the south and so forth.
That was a huge advantage that we lived here.
It
for
gave
9
us
months
that.
before we broke ground.
Yeah, we were here for about 9 months before we actually started building, and so that gave us time to just kind of see how the seasons affected the orientation of the house and so forth. And we wound up building with our covered patio facing, basically south on the lot, and so that gave us a lot of sunshine in the wintertime coming in on the patio. And the one thing, like I said, is a lot of our weather comes out of the southwest, and that's right off the corner of the patio over there. And so that would, we kind of knew that, and we were just sort of playing, but we found out, yeah, it'll rain clear across the patio 24 feet when it's blowing really good and hard, which makes it not very pleasant to be outside. So that's our biggest design change. And then we're gonna probably add a carport off one side of the house. That was sort of a loosely fit element that we were planning kind of in on that side, so we didn't put any windows on that side on the east side of the house, so that we could drop a roof line out over that way and put in a carport, which you can do a carport which is just a roof over the top, and then you can add some sidewalls later, and you can put in gravel to start with, and then you can pour cement later. You can finish in the front end and put a garage door on there if you want to. So you can stage this out again to pay cash as you can, and continue to develop your home site. And that's kind of the idea here too. Is we moved into the house before it was finished 6 months ago, right? About 6 months ago, and the kitchen's still not finished. The siding's still not done. The yard is not complete, which is our next project. And so you can do this and start living in the home, and we actually got this one finished a lot farther in before the last one. Our last one we finished, we put the insulation in the walls, put some plastic up over it, and moved in on a bare concrete floor with no sheetrock or anything, and started living in it, because again it saved us a lot of money. And then we finished it up, and not everybody is going to tolerate that, but it's certainly doable. There's a lot of variations on the theme. It's a matter of what you're willing to, trade off, or what concessions you will make in lieu of, getting out from under the mortgage trap or the rent trap. And, you can stay in like I said, an RV or a tent or whatever you want to do to get out of paying payments, to live somewhere. And that's the whole idea, the premise behind the video that we did that was free tiny houses for everyone, is you already are putting a lot of money out for shelter, some sort of living arrangement that you're in now. So if you could figure out how to divert that money over to a fund that would start your project on your home, then you could have a home without having to come up with extra money. So you already have the money, you just have to figure out how to rearrange it so you can spend it in that direction rather than in, you know, housing that you're currently doing. And so there's a lot of things you can do there. Stay back home with mom and dad, move in with some friends and relatives, whatever, you know, live in the backyard, whatever you want to do. I mean, how bad do you want to be mortgage free and not have to pay payments out every month anymore for housing, whatever, right? And so if you want a big difference in your life, then you need to sometimes make some, you know, some big decisions on how you're going to change the way you're living in order to get there. And that's what we were willing to do, and that's how we got to, you know, being mortgage free and not, you know, by the time we were in our 40s, we were semi-retired. And because when you don't have to pay out all these costs, then you can live on less or work less or whatever the case may be in order to spend, you know, have more time to do other things that you want to do. And that's the whole idea here.
Kevin, someone just emailed us a question.
Mm-hmm.
Kay would like to know what was the year, make, and model, and the length of our RV, because she really loved the way it was laid out and is looking for one and is having a hard time finding them. And she said, "Thank you so much for your hard work in helping others like myself become self-reliant."
Okay. So, and you're welcome, and I appreciate that. And so we had an email question come in that Anissa just read me wanting to know about the RV. And so here was the RV. It was a 1997 Alpenlight is the brand, and it's called a 34RK, and RK stands for rear kitchen. The kitchen was at the back end, which made the layout a lot more open. And so it was 1997. What was it? Did I cover everything there? So I would look for, you know, it was 34 feet long, and it was a fifth wheel, and so it was a lot of room, and we paid considerably less for it used. We bought it about 7 years ago with this project in mind, than what you would pay for something comparable new. I mean, you can spend, you know, just tens of thousands of dollars on those things, which is really kind of not the idea here. And like I said in our other video that we did, I would recommend not getting something that's too comfortable, because it'll probably slow you down from getting your project done, because that's kind of what I think it did to me. It was just comfortable and easy to live in, and I was in you know, not in a big hurry to get the house done just because of that. And if I'd have been in a little more cramped setting, a little less comfortable, I'd have probably been pushing a lot harder to get the house done to a point where we could move into that. And so that's something to think about. But you can buy these things. I mean, that's a great one to live in full time too. If you can find your way into a situation where you can stay in an RV like that. I mean, geez, I'd live in that full time. It didn't bother me a bit. And a cost of living in one of those is very little. I mean, the utilities are a fraction of what you would pay in a house, and so forth. So those are not being made anymore, that particular model and brand. They were built right here in Washington State years ago. But there's other companies that make them, and again, the rear kitchen winds up, you know, giving you a lot more space to live in, if you will. So there you go. What else? What else, Anissa? What do you think? No? Nothing? I put her on the spot over here. She's not on the camera, I am. Other thoughts? With a 9-year-old? Yeah, we actually, so the last house we built prior to this one was 24 by 36, which is kind of like a big 2-car garage. It's under 900 square feet, and we had 4 little kids when we moved into that, and so we, you know, we did a lot of creative living in that situation. But they were young, and it was an adventure. And at one point, they were all four had shared one bedroom for a while when they were young. Had a couple sets of bunk beds in there, and we made it work. And then, a little later on, we wound up building onto the house, and then everybody had their own space, and we wound up creating a lot more square footage. And then they all grew up, moved out, and then we were just rattling around in this 3,000 square foot house, wondering why we were living in all this house and making all these payments. And the tiny house I built on YouTube, what happened to that? It is sitting on the other side of the state still, and we put it up on a trailer, and we moved it off the property because I wanted to hang on to it. And it's actually over to a buddy of mine's. He's got a storage lot near where we used to live, and sitting over there at this point. And we're deciding whether we want to sell it or find it a home or whatever. It's still sitting there. Yes, we are still sane. This is definitely, I will tell you that, I've seen people get divorced building houses, and they weren't even doing the building. They were just having a house built, but just, arguing over the design elements and of course, the cost. And Anissa, can you do me a favor? And I need to plug in my computer. It's getting low. And so, yeah, it takes, were there times, yeah, a lot of patience and a lot of understanding. And here's the interesting thing. I have a lot more ability to visualize in the construction department than Anissa does. And so when we were trying to kind of figure out what things were going to look like, and where to put windows and how to design the kitchen and things like this, I could see this because I've spent a little more time in that department, if you will, than Anissa has. And so there was numerous times that she kind of had some blind faith with me about placement of various things in the house. And after we did it, she was happy to.
There was numerous times when I disagreed with you, didn't want to do it, fought it,
right.
And then when we did it, I was like, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Like the walls.
Yeah. Right. And even in this house, I think she trusted me on several different things that we did in here as sort of experimental things, and turned out we were really happy with the results. Trying to find property, yes. And I'll tell you a little short story on how that happened, how we wound up here. And I've lived in this state for 30 years.
I've lived here most of my life.
And catty corner from where we're at now, I lived in the northeast corner of the state. We're now in the southwest corner of the state, 500 and some miles away from where we were. And I wasn't even aware that this area existed. And I've been in this state all these years on the other side. And so we started looking over on the west side of the state, the ocean side of the state, if you will. We call this the coast side. Because we wanted to see, be able to spend more time around the ocean, and the weather is drastically different from one side of the state to the other. Where we lived before was very cold in the wintertime. I mean, nothing for it to be 25 below zero, and then very hot in the summertime, gets up in the 90s and the hundreds. And so there's a very four-season climate over there versus this side of the state, which is more of a Mediterranean climate. It's kind of cool and wetter. And so we started looking up on the north end of the west side, in the San Juan Islands up there. And beautiful area. Loved it. Been spending years going over there and visiting, and we thought, boy, that would be, really something to live there. And so we went out there and started looking around. We actually found a piece of property that we thought might fit our criteria. And then we decided against it simply because it put us quite a ways away from our kids and grandkids, and we had to actually take a ferry back and forth to get on and off the island. And in the summertime, that can be a real hassle. So we started moving down the coast, looking at different cities, and finding, various reasons why we did or didn't like the areas. Too expensive, too crowded, not enough amenities, so on and so forth. And I just was looking at real estate ads online and ran across some some ads for some properties on this peninsula, and I didn't even know it existed. And I said, well, we're gonna have to go take a look at this. I don't know where this is, but um, so we went over and took a look. Spent a week over here. The properties were, I mean, ridiculously inexpensive, which is what caught my eye. There was lots down here for as little as $7,000 or $8,000. Turned out didn't really like the lots that we saw at that price level, but we started looking at some other lots that were considerably more, but a lot nicer to fit the criteria that we were interested in finding in a piece of property. And so we found that, hey, this is going to work out for us over here, we think. And again, this is not we moved out of the poorest county in the state into basically the second poorest county in the state, which is where we're at now. So this is not a great economic area either. This is more of a tourist area. It's a we call it sleepy little beach towns that everybody likes to come visit in the summertime. But so tourism is here for
Which never bothers us because we bring our income.
4 or 5 months out of the year. They're busier and all get out, and then it gets just super quiet the rest of the year. And that was fine with us. Our income that we create for ourselves isn't dependent on a local economy. It's portable, so we didn't have to worry about income issues over here. So we said, hey, we can live anywhere. Let's live there. And that's how we got here. We found a piece of property that we liked. By the time we could sell our house and move over here, that particular piece of property sold, and we came over here to take a look around, and we actually wound up buying the property right next to it. So, and we're actually happy with it because I think this one wound up being the better piece. It just wasn't available when we had looked before, so that worked out real well for us. And it's pretty inexpensive for property that you can open the window up and listen to the surf from the beach outside, and it's about 5-minute walk through the trees and you're on the beach, so can't complain there. We just have a little more rain, but we don't have to shovel snow, so that's kind of where we're at. So I'm rambling a little bit. I don't know what else. If portable income, how? Well, we have a variety of products and services that we offer. My background has been in flood and fire restoration work, and so we owned a business that did that where we used to be, and so now we teach that industry, and we have some training products and some coaching things that we do for people in that industry. And in fact, we've got a couple of events coming up that we're going to be doing in Vegas and Florida this year, where Anissa is going to be speaking, and we're going to be doing some classes in that. So that's part of our income.
And I do women's retreats.
Women's retreats Anissa does with another gal here, Jane, and so we're going to be doing a retreat in Costa Rica for that this fall.
So our products, our how-to products.
And then obviously if you go to our selfreliantlife.com website, we have our building products and self-reliant products that we have there. So that's another thing that we do.
So Tanya says, I'm in Thurston County, Washington? That's what, oh, she is? Is that
I think that Thurston County is in Washington State. I'm not familiar with exactly where that's at, but
I believe it's over
nearby in the state. But anyway, so those are things that we do, and so that doesn't require us to be in any particular place, which is nice. And
She's up by Olympia.
oh, you're up. Okay, so that's by Olympia.
She's only 2 hours from us.
You're only a couple hours away from us. And so that gave us the opportunity to live in an area. So the nice thing was, if you do have a way of producing an income that is independent of a bricks and mortar situation or an economy that you're in, then you can live in lower economies like we are and take advantage. It's called Geo Arbitrage is what the phrase is that we use on that, and that is something that Tim Ferriss first started talking about in his book, The 4-Hour Work Week, which I read, and I met Tim years ago, and I said, well, that's what we needed. We need some of that. So Geo Arbitrage is taking advantage of a lower cost of living somewhere else and still having an income that would be higher like you would in a better economy. I don't have any 12-volt electrical courses right now, but that's probably going to change somewhere in the near future when we start designing our next project, which I'm getting this from my wife because we're not supposed to tell that one yet, but it's coming, so stay tuned. Here's the point where I say don't forget to subscribe and smash that bell, because if you hit the bell, then every time we come on, you'll know exactly when we're up live or with a new video, yada yada yada. There you go. I said it.
You'll do the 12-volt electrical in that.
And yes, we will have solar and 12-volt electrical in those new projects coming up. Building logistics and construction tips. Yes, so there's a thing called a feasibility study, and that's what you want to do if you start looking at a piece of property that you may want to build on, and find out what those costs to develop that property are going to be before you commit to purchasing said property, and make sure that's in line with your budget, and or at least knowing going in that those are the things you're going to. So for instance, the utilities, which is something that you'd want to know. So your water, your power, and your sewer. Now, if you're looking at a piece of property, any or all of those could be present, or maybe none of them. And so finding out what those utilities are going to take to get developed into your property, into your building site, are a big deal. For instance, in our scenario, there is no sewer available. So you have to put in a septic system on site. And so depending on the soil type of the property you're on or you're looking at, that may be a simple gravity fed system, which is fairly inexpensive to put in. Or depending on if the soil's not as good for drainage, you may have to have an engineered system, which could cost considerably more, 2 to 3 times as much.
Yeah, like 10,000 almost.
And you can determine prior to purchasing that property whether that's, which way you need to go. When we bought this property, we made sure that we could put in a gravity fed system, because that's the least expensive and the easiest to maintain of those types of septic systems. And so I think, what did we spend on that, Anissa? Do you remember?
4,000.
$4,000. So $4,000 for
an engineered system here would have cost me
12,000.
12,000.
And engineered would have been $12,000 for comparable. So we made sure that we didn't have that higher cost going into the project, and we did it for a 2-bedroom house. You can do them for different sizes. The system can be sized for different sizes of house, and we did it for a 2-bedroom, which gave us plenty of room. The next thing would be the cost of your power, bringing power into your site if you want to have electricity. In our case, I think it was about $33.
$2,900.
29. Okay,
Which
29.
again is another thing to think about when she was asking about building logistics.
Mm-hmm.
Is where you're going to place your house can cost you more money the further it is away
Exactly.
from the septic, the further away it is from the well and the power. You have to think about those things.
So siting is important. So where you put the house on the property in relation to where those utilities are going to have to come to the house site, because that can add more cost too. And in our particular scenario, our power is literally 20 feet off the back of the house from where the utility company brought it in. So it was a very short distance for us to bring that in. And so it was $2,900 to hook up to the electrical utility, and what they charged us to connect us. And then we had our powers on our side. Okay, see you later. I'll see you on the next video. But I lost my track here. Anyway, power. So, but if you'd had to run an underground power line or an overhead power line and into a pole or whatever, another 100 feet could make a big difference in cost. So that's something to consider too, is where your house sits in relation to those incoming utilities. And then the last thing for us was water. And water, city water or utility water was available out in the driveway in front of us, which was another $3,000 or something to hook up to. But the nice thing for us here is we have water, a high water table because of all the rain. Our water is literally 10 feet below the surface here. And so you can poke a pipe in the ground and get water anywhere, like sticking a straw in the ground. And so our cost of bringing water into on the property with our own well was about $400 or $450 to put in a well, and it literally took us about 30 minutes to do it, which was, you know, crazy, because the last one we put in cost us several $1,000s. And you know, that's another thing you have to consider. If you hook up to any of these utilities, then you've got an ongoing monthly bill for those utilities. So water, power, and sewer could be an added cost. We only have one monthly bill out of those three, which is power. And our power cost on this little bitty house is like $30, $40 a month, depending on the time of the year. So we get a little bit more in the wintertime. We've been heating the house with just this little tiny electric heater that you plug into the wall, just a little $20 heater, because it's not, doesn't get that cold here. So that was very nice. I mean, our utilities are about 10% of what we paid in the house we were living in before, in comparison. So you know, unbelievable difference in cost of living to be here versus where we were at. But a lot smaller house and different climate. So something to think about. And we super insulated the house. The housing, the code for insulation here is just as high as it is on the cold side of the state. And so with the milder climate here, gosh, we don't have to have air conditioning here. It doesn't get that warm. And in the wintertime, just running the heater part of the time, we don't even run it, you know, round the clock or anything, just usually a little bit during the day. Keeps the house plenty comfortable. So, you know, big savings on all that. So yeah, utilities, cost of, you know, of bringing them in, which is developing, you know, your infrastructure on your property, and you know, finding a good contractor you can work with is another construction tip. Depending on how much of this you're going to do yourself, what I did was I hired a guy that did concrete and framing work. I'm not a concrete guy, so I helped him do that, which cut my costs. I was just kind of his helper, and then he helped me do the framing because I just needed somebody else that could swing a hammer and help me tip the walls up and so forth. And so I just paid him by the hour to do it, versus having a contractor, a general contractor, come in and do all the you know, do all the work for you, which again, they're gonna charge you profit, overhead, material costs. They're marking up those things. If they bring subcontractors in, like plumbers and electricians, through them, they typically will mark their costs up because they're overseeing the project. And so that's again where you're going to spend more money, versus you being your own general contractor, which you can do, and then you hire these people in and you get the bids. And I would get several several of the costs down that way, and get several different bids from each of these entities, so you can kind of see what the pricing is. Some guys are going to be a little higher, a little lower, and you know, just kind of check them out, make sure that other people are happy with their work and that they show up when they say they're going to, and do the job, and you know, stick to the price and that kind of thing. Those are big things to consider, and you know, kind of keeps the competition, keeps the price reasonable, if you will. All right. Anything else? Well, we've been on here for about an hour, which is plenty, I think, and appreciate all your comments and questions. And if there's nothing else, I'll give you a couple seconds here if you want to pop anything else in the chat box. If not, we'll probably just wrap this up, and then we'll do another one again sometime soon. Okay. So thanks for watching. Hope I helped you with some questions, and you know, you can certainly email us at kevin@aselfreliantlife.com if you want to, you know, get more things answered that you're interested in. Check out our website, of course. This is where I tell you all the stuff. Check out the website. Don't forget to subscribe. Yada yada yada. Right? So we can have more fun. Save more money. Be mortgage free. See you guys on the next video.